The township of Old Bridge sits in the southeast corner of Middlesex County, touching the Raritan Bay at Lawrence Harbor and sharing a long border with Monmouth County. The history of this town is linked to its accessibility to water and land routes, and it's a history that goes back very far.
If you want to go back to the very, very beginnings, 100 million years ago, we were covered by water, actually. And then the dinosaurs came and went, and we were flooded again. So we're really on New Jersey's coastal plain. And the fossil finds here are really great. We have a photograph of a fossil ant that was found down on Cliffwood Beach. And it was found in a piece of amber by a couple of rockhounds. And the importance of it is that it now resides in Harvard University. This is the missing link between the ant and the wasp family. When the waters receded and left a lot of sea fossils here, you can find trilobites and ammonites and sea worms and all kinds of sea creatures, actually. And you can surface collect here for those things because the glacier activity stopped at Perth Amboy, so that none of our soil got covered up like up in North Jersey. You find big rocks and that tumbled down with the glaciers. But here, probably if the Indians even came back today, they would know the lay of the land pretty much.
The first residents of what is now Old Bridge left evidence of their lifestyle over a good portion of the town.
We all know about Henry Hudson coming into the Raritan Bay and making first contact with the Indians. And they were called the Lenni Lenape. They were called the Delawares by the English. They were a peaceful tribe, mostly lived in family groups. The Indians actually lived off the fruit of the land here. We have many nuts and berries and wild strawberries, and they threw fish weirs across the small streams. And the reason we know they were in our area, you can find shell heaps where the Indian traveled down the Minisink Trail. We have bird points and leaf-shaped points that would have been used like on a javelin stick. Most of the museums here have quite a nice collection of Indian artifacts and arrowheads.
European settlers came to the area to expand their trading and start small farms.
When the English overcame the Dutch or took over, the English started sending people over for settlement. Berkeley and Carteret were awarded the state of New Jersey, and when Carteret died, he sold his portion to 12 proprietors. They took on 12 partners, so we ended up with 24 proprietors. Those 24 proprietors owned half the state of New Jersey, then called East Jersey. Thomas Warren, one of the original 24 proprietors, owned about 1,000 acres right where our museum is located. And his ancestors still live, actually, in the area.
Like many farming communities, Old Bridge grew in sections, a trait that is still evident. And like other towns, it was originally part of another.
We were once the South Ward of Perth Amboy, when you're going back to early 1700s. Then when the township of South Amboy was developed, it took in Monroe almost all the way way down to Cranberry Creek was part of South Amboy, part of Saraville, East Brunswick, and where we are now. Then we were called Madison Township after President Madison, who frequented our area, by the way. He was a classmate of Philip Frenew, who lived in the Matawan area. It was never really a center of town. Early on, probably, the earliest development probably was around the Cheesequake area up on 34. Actually, ships from all over the world came up the Matawan Creek. That was a port of entry and export, where Perth Amboy was only actually a port of entry. And I think in the early days, because of the taxes on the various English and imports or anything that came into the 13 colonies was taxed, that people went around it so they didn't have to pay the tax.
Education has always been very important to the people of Old Bridge. One-room schoolhouses dotted the town well into this century.
One of the first and earliest schools in the township is the Morristown School. It dates back to 1788, and then probably Cheesequake and Browntown came next, and we still, we had about 7 schools, including Herbertsville and Cedar Grove, and the Millbridge schools. The children received a pretty good education. They were promoted actually by getting through their readers. Teacher might have some of the old books that we have. It's amazing. There were 35 or 40 children assigned to a one-room schoolhouse about this size. And you figure one teacher with 8 grades in one room. But if the kid was smart and the things were written on the blackboard and finished their work, I'm sure that they could move ahead rapidly because they heard it over and over again, probably for 8 years before they even got to the 8th grade.
Many older children could attend only part of the school year, as their help was needed on the family farm or at work in support of the family. One area industry, pottery, actually gained a significant reputation throughout the country.
Pots and salt glazed pottery and things were made here probably before the Revolution. And you can find them if you go to the Brooklyn Museum or the Ford Museum. If you go to the Smithsonian or Winterthur, you can always find Cheesequake, South Amboy pottery. It's called salt glaze because the early kilns that they built, which is the ovens that they burnt the clay in, when it got a certain temperature, they would throw sea salt into the kiln, and the evaporation of the salt into the kiln coated the outside, and it made them impervious actually to water. Anyone who collects early salt glazed pottery will be collecting Cheesequake South Amboy pots.
Much of the town's prosperity depended on its location on Raritan Bay. From trade site to recreation haven, Lawrence Harbor has always been vital to Old Bridge's identity and well-being.
Lawrence Harbor had a very nice boardwalk, and it was really a family place where you could eat and sit on the boardwalk in the evening. We had the dance hall there with big bands. There was a mansion built there just before Prohibition. The Land Club, which is the Actors Guild club that supports the actors, mostly in New York City, came there in their summers, mostly during Prohibition. Lawrence Harbor became quite I say it's the poor man's first resort. All the people with a lot of money went down further to the shore, maybe to Long Branch or later on to Asbury Park. But the man who lived in Newark could get on a train, bring his family down to Lawrence Harbor. They had little cottages there, one room. For a couple of dollars a week, this factory worker in Newark could put his family at the seashore for a whole week for just a little bit of money. But it really was the first poor man's resort on the Jersey coast. I think we deserve that distinction.
Unlike many communities, Old Bridge has her past on display, and you can see it the first Sunday of every month at the Thomas Warren Museum.
We are not seeking artifacts. They're coming in to us even when we're not seeking them. As you glance around this room, you can see that we have no more room for artifacts, and when something important comes in, I really have to make room for it, and it presents a great problem. We're in an expansion program at the moment, and a 60-foot addition on the back of this building will be open, I hope, as soon as spring thaw comes, and 3 months henceforth we'll be in it. The one-room schoolhouse that we're in will be maintained mostly as that for a research room.
When we return, we'll take a look at the government of Old Bridge and examine a remarkable comeback from the brink of financial ruin. Mayor Barbara Cannon was recently re-elected to a second term to head a very common form of municipal government.
We have a strong mayor-council form of government, which means that the mayor is elected directly by the residents, and then we have a 9-member council, 6 of which represent wards and 3 are at large. They are geographic, and then they have to be balanced in terms of population. So because of the size of Old Bridge, we were able to accommodate the 6 wards. And the change of form of government occurred in 1984. Prior to that, we were a council-manager form of government.
Even choosing to run for another term means Mayor Cannon must have very strong feelings about her job.
It's exciting, challenging, sometimes frustrating. It's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work, and I do enjoy it. I'm not new to government work because I've served as a councilwoman for 8 years. So I certainly was familiar with municipal government, but it's a whole different perspective being at the administrative end and sort of being the boss and being responsible for implementing the programs, making sure the ordinances are obeyed and making sure the services are provided. So it's a different view than when I was a councilwoman, which was primarily legislative responsibilities.
During her first term, serious financial problems for Old Bridge were reversed through a collaborative effort.
Some of the problems had been, accumulating over the years. In fact, when the state did come in and did their evaluation and assisted us to sort of get over the rough spots, they determined it was, over the past 10 years that a lot of the internal problems had been occurring. I think what happened was that Old Bridge grew very quickly within a relatively short amount of time, and a lot of the procedures and processes and so forth that we were using in town hall just never sort of came into this 20th century. It's been a difficult time, and the beginning certainly was very painful because I had to make a lot of decisions that affected staff as well as obviously the residents. But I think that the good that has come out of it, in the sense that I think we're on a much stronger foundation now, certainly financially. I think certainly I've learned a lot, and I think the staff has learned a lot in terms of what we do today and how it affects not just tomorrow, but tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, so that I think we think more in terms of not just solving the immediate problem, but what effect it's going to have in the future.
The Municipal Center is located near the heart of Old Bridge and houses a surprising array of departments and services.
We have the skating rink, we have tennis courts, so we have the recreation area. We're hoping to maybe put some volleyball courts back in that area. And of course we have the library. We also have a civic center, which is the recreation building. And then of course we have the municipal building with the majority of the offices, and then we have the police department, which is here, and then we also have the public works area, which is just down the way a little bit. So it's pretty much very contained in that we have almost all the services in this one area here.
In 1994, Cedar Ridge and Madison Central High Schools were combined to form Old Bridge High School.
School population had been dropping for some time, and now it is going back up. So I think there was an attempt to try to maximize the facilities that we had, and it was felt that by combining the high school that they would be able to offer more courses, whereas courses were being dropped because they just didn't have enough in one high school to sustain, some of the advanced language courses and the more advanced courses in the sciences and so forth. And also at the same time they could consolidate staff and they could make it more efficient, so that hopefully that it would realize some savings, because our school budget is on the high side, and people are always looking ways to economize without, affecting the education programs.
When we come back, we'll visit the oldest fire department in Old Bridge. Nothing is more dangerous to a community than fire. Organized fire departments grew up in the need to prevent calamity. They are the ultimate example of neighbor helping neighbor. The Lawrence Harbor Fire Company is the oldest in Old Bridge, and its members are very aware of its history of community service.
In 1924, the community was a small community, mostly of bungalows and bungalettes. The problem started with the locomotives running down the Long Branch line, which is still here today. Locomotives throw out a lot of sparks and smoke, as you know, and part of the woods caught fire. When the fire was reported, it had to go, someone, if they had a phone, would call it into police headquarters, which was at the beachfront. And if someone was at the police station at the time to answer the phone, then they would call Keyport or Perth Amboy or South Amboy. Well, that was unacceptable to the people of the time. So they got together and organized a fire department for that purpose. That was in September of 1924. They built a wooden structure on the site of where the first aid is presently, and they built the firehouse themselves out of wood that was donated by the Conover Lumber Company.
The fire company got their current home in a swamp.
This building was the first aid building. The first aid's original building burned down in 1969. They built this building, and they couldn't handle the mortgage, and they couldn't handle the amount of work that went into maintaining it and to raise the money to pay for mortgage and electric. This was a total electric building. So we made an agreement with the first aid whereby we traded our old firehouse, which suited their purposes, and we took this building, which suited our purposes.
We've done a lot of renovations, widened the doors so the fire apparatus could fit in. Built a room here out of nothing for the men and their families. We have an upstairs we rent out for functions, for money makers for the fire department. We have approximately 50 men. We have a lot of lifetime membership members that are 25 years or more that are members that are not really active. Our fire department consists of 3 pumpers, a brush truck, a rescue truck.
There are display cases in the firehouse filled with items from the company's past, which serve to remind its members of those who have gone before.
Okay, we have a badge cabinet up here with all the deceased members that were firemen at the time that died, and the badge gets hung in the display case for hopefully forever. You always have to save your history, protect your history, you cherish it, you learn from it, you learn from the past, you learn from what mistakes were made, you learn different things.
Firefighting is often a thankless job, and as volunteers, the members of the Lawrence Harbor Fire Company are not paid. So why would anyone want to be a fireman?
It's one of the few places you're called upon by someone that knows nothing about you, doesn't know you from Adam. You're out. Could be 3 in the morning, could be 2 in the afternoon, could be at any time. When you're needed, you need it, and you go. And everyone is treated the same. Regardless of where you live, what neighborhood, and what your financial situation is, everybody gets the same treatment.
My grandfather was a fireman, my father. I had uncles in the fire department. My other uncle was involved in the police department as a policeman. So there was always something going on, always stories being heard.
To go along with the good, the bad part is you make such fabulous friends over the years, in my amount of time, and you lose these people, and that hurts very much, and they're always in our minds, and are always in our hearts, and we always think about them.
After a short break, we'll discover what kind of town Old Bridge is today, and try to look into the future. People move to a town for several reasons, and stay only if they find what they're looking for.
I actually moved into the township in 47 and built a house on a plot of land that belonged to my ancestors, who were the Disboroughs, the Morgans, and the Lambersons, which are old names actually in the family.
I moved to Lawrence Harbor from Jersey City in 1968. I raised my family in this town. I have 2 daughters and a stepson. I like it here. When I came from the city, I thought this was paradise, and I still do. And I think it's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise kids.
When I came here, I had 2 children and the third on the way. And when we moved here, we moved to Old Bridge, not away from New York, which is where I came. We chose to move to Old Bridge. And one of the reasons that we moved here is it reminded me of the area in which I grew up, which was in a city in the Midwest, but the community was very similar to that. And we do have so many activities and things to offer, and it's just, I think, a wonderful environment in which to raise a family.
No one can ever know for certain what tomorrow will bring, but we can all hope for a brighter future for ourselves and our children.
The future is in consolidation of the township into one town. We're not one town now. Actually, a lot of people who live on this end of town relate more to Monmouth County and the Matawan area. People up the other end of town are really up, going toward more East Brunswick, and it's always been that way, even in colonial times.
I think I see more development. Controlled growth, I think, is the word that we want to use, that we determine as a community how we want our town to grow. And when we did the prior master plan, we did have a whole mechanism for getting input from the community, and we hope to be able to do that again. We also definitely need economic development, and we are going to be redoing part of our master plan, especially for the Route 9 and Route 18 corridor, as well as the beach area, to try to encourage more economic development in those areas.
Well, I think I'm going to die in this town, and it's a good place to live. You're safe. Your family's safe. They can go out at night. I came from a pretty tough neighborhood up in the city, and you didn't go out without bodyguards or a lot of people, and that's not existent here. For Old Bridge, in my district, in this side of town, we kind of like it just the way it is. We're not looking for any kind of new buildings or new this or new that. What we have is fine. We like it just the way it is. It's a comfortable place. It's comfortable living. It's good people in town. And you can't really ask for much more than that.